The library was my space, and there was just so much.
To the Harbor Grace excursion with the boys to have a time.
So I am so excited to see so many of you here for this final event. This actually is my high school home library. I used to sort of study upstairs in the stacks as a teenage girl. I'm so excited to be here with three of the sharpest, funniest, and most creative minds in Canadian fiction, and I'm not just saying that. I'm also so lucky to call all three of them friends and very close colleagues, and I think that, between the three of you, we've got murder by dagger, murder by influencer, murder by puzzle, and somehow we're still laughing. So we'll be talking about your fabulous new books, the unforgettable women at the heart of them, and what it takes to solve a mystery, whether you're a nosy auntie, a journalist with a deadline, or a reclusive genius with a ghost for a best friend. But I would like to introduce, they've already been introduced, but I'd like to just quickly summarize their books so you know what we're getting into. So I'll start with Uzma. Detective Auntie is a cozy, clever whodunit featuring Cozier. Oh, I really did not get that. A widowed, retired South Asian auntie who launches her own investigation when her daughter is accused of murder. Set in Scarborough, it's both a celebration of community and a mystery full of heart, humor, and hijinks. Bianca's latest, a most puzzling murder indeed is what you wanted it to be called. I know that from your book launch the other night. Is about Destiny Whip, an emotionally guarded puzzle prodigy who's invited to a remote estate under mysterious circumstances. She finds herself while there unraveling a murder plot, decoding cryptic clues, and possibly her own past. It's a genre-blending mystery with magical elements and real puzzles that the reader can solve. Some of them better than others. Widows and Orphans is the second installment in the Quill and Packet series. It's clever, fast-paced mystery that follows journalist Kat Conway as she covers a glossy wellness summit gone wrong. When an influencer turns up dead, Kat must navigate professional chaos, mother-daughter drama, and small-town secrets. It's sharp satire wrapped in a satisfying whodunit. So these books are, hold on a second. They are all different, and yet they have a few through lines that I would like to talk about, because as I was reading them, I kind of was struck by their differences, but also how all of these events just tend to have a way of coming together. So there's some interesting little through lines I'd like to talk about, but I have so many questions. I'm worried that we won't get through them, and I want to open the floor to you, so I'm going to dive right in. So I know, personally, that none of you started your careers planning to write mysteries. So what happened? Where did it all go wrong? I'm just kidding. What drew you to the genre, and maybe importantly, why now?
For me, I've always been a fan of mystery novels. And in fact, my friends were quite surprised when my first book came out and it published Aisha at Last, and it was a rom-com. Because growing up, I was a big fan of Agatha Christie and, the other, like, Sherlock Holmes. I read all of the canon. But when I had the idea for Aisha at Last, I wrote it, and the book did really well. And then I told my agent at the time, she's since retired, the next book that I wanted to write I wanted to write a mystery. And she said, no, you already wrote a romance, it did well, write a couple more before you even dip your toe into mystery. Because I guess it's an unwritten rule that for writers, establish yourself in a genre, find your readership before you can move on. So really, I'm kind of manifesting a dream that I had for myself. And the character of Khosrow Khan has literally been with me since 2017 when she popped into my head while I was eating dinner.
For me, I'm just obsessed with the psychology of people. I'm the person who lies awake at 2 a.m. I get woken up by my menopause, thank you menopause, and sit there going, why did this person say this at the dinner party? Why did they think this? And did I hurt this person's feeling? Do I owe this person an apology? Why did somebody do that? So I'm always fascinated with people's motives and what drives them. And what simmers below the surface, and that makes for good murder mystery. And I also like torturing myself, so I said, let's try a new genre.
Am I on? I am on. I think it's just, for me, the fact that it's much easier to murder people in fiction than it is in real life. And there are so many people I think about all the time. And I think about ways of, and I pass this on to my daughter, I'd like you to know, because when she was about 6, her favorite book was called Strange Deaths. And it's an actual book of the way people, interesting ways people have died. And I just bought it for myself from a used bookstore because I don't know where hers went, because I, like you, I lie awake at night thinking, oh, could the cat actually eat a whole body? Like, he's quite food motivated. So I spend a lot of time thinking about, yeah, how do we murder somebody?
I know. I lie awake thinking about if my cats would eat me. I do. I mean, I'm like, are they just pretending to love me and like playing the long game? So, well, I'm so glad you did. I think it's so much fun and okay. So my next question is a very predictable question that I think every author always gets at every event, which is, are you a plotter or are you a pantser? So a plotter means, like, do you do an outline and stick to that outline, or pants is like flying by the seat of your pants and just, flying blind all the way through it. But I need to know, because I was at Bianca's launch the other night, and you said that you just sat down and you were like, I wanted to see if I could write a murder mystery without knowing who did it or why or anything. So I need to know more about that, and I want to know from all of you, when it comes to writing mystery, how do you approach structure and surprises aside from just seeing what might happen? Do any of the rest of you outline, and do you surprise yourself?
I'll begin. Every writer that I speak to in this genre, they plot meticulously. Before they begin writing, they know who was murdered, why they were murdered, who killed them, all the things. And I've never plotted any of my previous books. So I thought, okay, if there's one book that I'm going to plot, it's going to be this book. And I sat down and I tried to plot it, and my brain just laughed at me. And it was just like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And as soon as I know what's going to happen in the story, I have zero desire to write it. So what I did was, I'm going to create an amazing, smart, fierce, intelligent protagonist, and I'm going to follow her and see where she takes me. And, I mean, it kind of worked out.
Really? It did? Like, were there ever any moments where you were like, I need to make a major U-turn, or you just were able to just keep going?
No, there were so many U-turns. Yeah. This is not an efficient way to write a novel. I'm not advocating for this way. There were many, many U-turns, but there were just as many amazing surprises where somebody who I wasn't even suspicious of was suddenly lurking in the shadows. And I was like, this person's dodgy. We need to keep an eye on them. And it was great.
So I think I know that you're an outliner. I think I know this about you.
Yeah,
but I know that
we've
had
written a book
to.
together.
Yes,
she knows I'm an outliner
together. So
yeah, definitely.
And
yeah, I had a very detailed outline, and my process is like almost. I'm trying to be as scientific as possible. Hearing your process is making me break out in hives. I don't understand. Like, we need to talk more about this. But no, I have a 20-page outline, and I break it down by chapter, and I have it's like a table. It's like plot, and then clues in another column, and then the stuff that the reader doesn't know but I know in another column. It's just like and then, you know what? It's funny because it all turns into a mess anyway. And then, but I get to the end of it, and I'm like, well, I got to rewrite it from the start anyway. But at least I feel like I'm in control. I think that's the illusion that I have. I'm very type A.
Here's the thing. So you chop up all of your ingredients, and you've got the carrots and the onions and everything, and you feel like you're in control, but then you put it into the pot, and it all goes to mush in terms of soup anyway.
Yeah. But the anxiety that you're giving yourself, how do you sleep at night? This is why you can't sleep at night.
Bianca's
Try outlining. Try again, Bianca.
Bianca's like throwing the carrot in whole and then taking the immersion blender to it. Like, it's fine.
classic Canadian fashion, I fall right in the middle of you. Yeah, straight down the middle of the road. In my other fiction, anyway, I'm like a plantser, I would say. So a little bit of each. But writing this mystery series with my our dear friend, Kate Hilton, which has been a complete dream, you really do need an outline, unfortunately, because we need to sort of know where each of the other one is going, and we alternate chapters. So it is very useful. But again, it just falls just to hell by the halfway through. And I always picture other writers like with these fantastic, like serial killer walls with everything connected with red thread. And I'm just sitting there like, my eyes spinning, staring at a blank screen. The outline does help, knowing where you're going to go next.
I want to know. Oh, sorry. You
So,
go ahead. Yeah.
Just on that, it just always brings to mind that episode of Friends where they're carrying the couch, the sofa up the stairs, and it's pivot, and
they end up cutting it in half. Yeah.
halfway through any book, it's just pivot.
I have an opinion about the whole like colored sticky notes, red thread, tab authors, and I think they're just doing it for social media. Come on, you can't have like 10 different colored tabs that you look at your thing and you're like, oh, the red tab is for, red herrings. I'm like, come on, it's not real.
Those were the girls who had all the colored pencils.
Yes, right. Yeah.
It's a procrastination tactic. As someone who has multicolored everything,
I don't
it
judge.
is. It just looks nice, and then I take a picture and I post it in my, I send it to my writer friends. I'm like, look, and they're like, nice. And now I'm like, but now I have to write the damn thing. So I end up exactly where I started anyway. It just looks nice.
People think that those authors know something that everybody else doesn't know, but they don't. They just have all the colored, but they have the good school supplies. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's good. Okay, so each of your books blends entertainment with deeper themes. It's such a sweet spot for me because I love having fun when I read, and I love also knowing that I'm getting all this juicy stuff. So it's current events, grief, generational tension, systemic critique. But how do you balance that with the amount of fun you all are definitely having and also want your readers to have as they read? And there are a few parts to this question, but you can ask me what those are because I always forget this second and third part when I'm answering. So do you think readers are also craving something specific right now from books like this? And are you, as writers, craving something specific when you write them?
Yeah, my book, it's called Detective Auntie, and it's got like a really bright pink cover, but it's actually a meditation on grief and transformation. It's about a woman who is in her late 50s. About a year before the start of the book, she has lost her husband. She suffered like a real tragedy in her past life about 2 decades prior, and as a result, she kind of fled Toronto and moved to North Bay and is being summoned back to Toronto to help her daughter. So there's a lot going on with Goser Han. She's, it's really about someone who's like embracing their second act now that her main role as a caregiver has kind of ended. And I just can't seem to help myself. Like I just have to put these themes because these are the kinds of things that I think about. So even though it is a cozy whodunit with all of the tropes of that genre, it is also very much a novel about what does it mean to be, what does your family mean to you, how can we reinvent ourselves at different times in our life, what does it mean to be part of community. And personally, I always want my stories with like a lot of meat to them, right? So I want the kind of, to continue the analogy, the simmering broth that has all of these different ingredients, even a whole carrot that hasn't been chopped up in advance for some reason.
It's a garnish.
Bianca.
I just need to tell you, I have a 50-year-old widowed friend who just moved to North Bay.
No way. Are you
And I honestly
serious?
was
Can
like,
you introduce
why
me?
would you do such a thing?
Because it's peaceful and
I
beautiful.
will, yeah. So, yes, I will.
Yeah, for me as well, I've got a character who's also mired in grief. It's a journey of self-discovery. But for me, I think I was getting so frustrated with how we are losing our critical thinking skills. If something isn't condensed into a meme or a reel that can be consumed in like a few seconds, we move on, and we just don't think about things. And so I wanted to write a book that forced you to engage with it, that forced you to write in it. And for those of you who have heart attacks at the thought of like writing in a book, good luck. So I really wanted a book that was going to make readers think. I wanted it to be escapist and fun, but really make them think. and really engage with the text. And hopefully, that was something I was able to do.
I love writing in books. I also love getting secondhand books that have things written in them. I know, I'm at the bottom of the author pile for that. But for me, when I was a journalist, when I was a columnist, my underlying philosophy, if I had one, was always a spoonful of sugar. And I am not going to sing for you because you would all get up and leave. But it really is the Mary Poppins idea that you can give people serious material and they will engage with it happily if you do it in a way that is funny often. Humor is the great leveler. It's the place where we all meet. So in this series, we want each of the books to have a serious kind of social message at its heart. The first one is about the consequences of sort of historical sexual harassment. And this one is really about misinformation and disinformation, how the wellness and anti-vaccine communities overlap. And Kate and I always say that we would have been burned as witches 500 years ago because we could not have foreseen when we wrote the book that we would be living in the middle of a measles epidemic in this province. It's kind of terrifying, I have to say. But we wanted to do it not in a preachy way, I don't think any of us do, but in a way that involves the reader's mind and heart as well.
So for Liz and Uzma, your main characters are women of a certain age, I say, as I seem to be having a prolonged hot flash. My microphone is all wet from my sweat. It's fine. Hopefully it doesn't, it's not plugged in, thank God. Wise, experienced, and often underestimated. Bianca Destiny is younger and also often underestimated, but you've written older female characters in previous novels with so much complexity and heart. I remember once being asked to make a character younger so that more readers would want to read about her. It's amazing how sometimes things are just not sugar-coated too, and you're like, oh God, do I have a sell-by date? Is this? And there is still some resistance in publishing and in the world at large when it comes to centering older women in stories or in the world at all. But can you tell me about that experience and what it means to push back on those expectations in your work?
I had the opposite experience, or we had the opposite experience. The first draft we wrote of the first book, Bury the Lead, Kat was a young journalist. She was in her late 20s. And frankly, trying to write her was like trying to drag a body through the sand. She just did not leap off the page at all. And I was like, I don't understand you. I don't know anything about people in their late 20s. I'm so sorry. And it was only when we rewrote her as a woman in midlife who had a surly teenaged son and an ex-husband she did not like very much and a career that was going down the pipes that she suddenly sprang gloriously to life. Because it is at this time in our lives, I think, that we rediscover so much about ourselves and find new paths and are at this moment where we can pivot, to quote Ross. I think it's such a fertile place to write about. And I'm seeing now all kinds of detectives who are older or midlife, Richard Osman, Deanna Raybourne's new series, Laura Lipman's new book is about a detective who's a bit older. So I think it's a very rich, and we know who buys books also. So that's important.
For me, my original idea was, because I'm a big Agatha Christie fan, I was really inspired by, she's got two very famous detectives, Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple. And I thought it would be very interesting to write a book about a Miss Marple type character. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the character, Miss Marple is an unmarried woman living in a small town in the UK, and she basically, because of her knowledge of human psychology, has this Sherlock Holmesian ability to see through lies and figure out the truth. And for me, I made Khosrow Khan someone who's a little bit different. She's married, she has adult children, she's recently lost her spouse. As I said, she suffered a tragedy earlier in her life. And I was really interested in kind of marrying the idea of a Miss Marple character who lives in a very diverse suburb, the same suburb I grew up in, Scarborough, and she knows her community very well, she knows her people very well, and she's using that kind of community knowledge as well as that community trust, because, we all know aunties, Aunties can be nosy and ask you all sorts of inappropriate questions, but they are also very good at getting to the heart of things. At least I like to think so because now I'm an auntie. So I know best, as I keep telling my children. And I wanted to kind of reinvent the character of Agatha Christie's Miss Marple, but in a Canadian, South Asian, very immigrant-rich community kind of context. And as for her age, I feel the same way. Like I'm not yet in my 50s, but I feel like I do write rom-coms, and my rom-com characters are always in their 20s. And the further away I get from my 20s, I'm like, I don't understand that, but I want to look ahead and see what that is like, and that's really interesting to me. And I think as writers, we always have to do the thing that's exciting and interesting to us, because we have to, most of the time we're just locked in our offices talking to ourselves, right? We have to make it interesting for ourselves.
Yeah, for me, I always write from a place of rage. And whether it's a murder mystery or fantasy or whatever, it comes from a place of injustice and rage. And my last book was about 6 witches in their 80s who are bringing down the patriarchy. And that came from every time I went onto social media, every targeted ad that was at me was telling me, how dare I age? I need to dye my hair. I need to have face serums. I need serums for wrinkles. I should be dressing like this. And I must pretty much be disappearing if I'm not doing that. And that really annoyed me. So that's why I wrote those older characters. This time, Destiny is 21, but she's an old soul. Have you ever seen those babies get born and you pick them up and they've got the oldest eyes? And you look like you're staring into the universe and the ages. So Destiny is very much an old soul. I myself am a Capricorn, and I've been told many times that I was born 80 years old and that I just get younger with age. And so Destiny's an old soul. Just not on the outside.
So family dynamics run through all your books. In Detective Auntie, the mother-daughter bonds and general expectations are huge. In Widows and Orphans, we feel Kat's strained relationship with her mother. And in Most Puzzling Murder, Destiny's orphanhood is so central to her story. So how do family relationships shape your stories, and why are you so drawn to them as writers?
It's the central relationship, right, in all of our lives. And it's interesting because I myself had a very joyful and quite uncomplicated relationship with my mother and my late mother, and I miss her very much. She was probably the one who turned me on to mysteries, and in her dying days, I read Donna Leon to her. And people always say, write what you know, but I actually think, write what you don't know, which both of you have already said, write what interests you, otherwise you're going to be so bored. So Kate and I wanted to, and Kate also has, her mother Margot's lovely, so we wanted to explore this idea of a fraught, kind of very tense relationship between a mother and a daughter. And we made the mother, we call her like a mix of Ariana Huffington and Hillary Clinton. So she's very annoying, she's very overbearing, but she was so much fun to write. And of course, you get to have the arc of how their relationship changes from the beginning of the book to the end.
Yeah, for me in this one, I've got the Scruffmore family. They're a magical royal family, and everybody is vying for dominance. Everybody wants the throne, and for me, it is fascinating to see big families in terms of backstabbing, in terms of who wants what, who the favorite sibling is. I mean, you just have to watch the real royal family for inspiration. I said this is a bit like Prince Harry's Spare. So that's what fascinates me. And it's, I married into a big family. So my family's quite small. My husband has 4 brothers. He was the youngest of 4 brothers. And it was so interesting coming into a family, and I would try and arrange something, and I get told, ooh, no. Ooh, Liana is the person who arranges things. You can't step on her toes. Okay. Then I tried to invite people over, and they were like, oh no, Mandy's the one who has people over. You can't do that. So for me, it's just fascinating how families work the unwritten rules and what happens when you step on people's toes.
And for me, similarly, I grew up in a pretty big extended family. My immediate family was just 4 people, but my parents immigrated to Canada in the 1970s, and they were kind of like the first family the first people from our family who moved across the ocean, and they basically sponsored my aunts, uncles, etc. And so now we have almost 40 people because people got married and had kids and etc. So I'm used to being surrounded by a big cast of characters, and everyone's family's crazy. So my family is no different. They're lovely people, but everyone has different personality quirks. So I can't seem to help myself. I wish I could sometimes just write a book about like 2 people and maybe a couple of their friends, but instead everyone I write seems to have this vast network of family and community, and it's because I'm reflecting what I grew up with, and it is more fun. And I'm sure my fellow writers have had the wonderful experience of having a side character try to take over your book because they're so great and they have the best lines, and I have to kind of reel myself back. But family relationships are definitely an ongoing theme in all of my stories, and I'm sure they'll continue to be.
I think we had that in our book that we wrote together, that Dadu he tried to take over so many times, and there was this whole sort of Bollywood director subplot that, frankly, if it ever did get made into a movie, I just want that to be the whole movie. Like, forget everybody else. So we did touch on this a few minutes ago, the idea of grief being so central to a lot of the plots in your books. I feel that grief is impossible to avoid in a murder mystery, a good one anyway, because we have to have respect for human life even if murders are happening. But in your books, the grief feels so thoughtfully handled. But how do you approach writing about loss in these stories that also have so much humor and light? I know, yeah.
So my character starts off in the opening pages clutching an emotional support urn because she's not allowed to have an emotional support dog because her life is just too all over the place. So she carries this urn around with these ashes in it, and throughout the story we find out who they belong to. But I have an emotional support urn as well with my dog and my cat's ashes. And every time I travel to my friend's cottage, which was their happy place, I take them with. And there I have them clutching them. And then we brought a new cat that we recently adopted. He's quite a lemon. Everything is wrong with this cat. And he knocked over this thing of ashes. And there was all the ashes on the ground. And you've got to be picking them up. And the thing is that you have to laugh. Even in the worst of grief, even in life's darkest moments, you have to laugh. And I think that's something that we all bring to our novels, is a duality of human nature.
It's interesting. I only recently thought about this. It's funny, as you say, the sort of the humor we find in darkness. And I think, why are you so morbid, Liz? Why are you so obsessed with darkness and weird things? And I think, it's because you grew up Catholic. And honest to God, how many funerals did I go to by the time I was 12, where the casket is open and all the kids are there and they're all like, "Oh, look at the dead guy." It's amazing that I grew up as sane as I am, really, when you think about how weird that church is. But I will just say quickly I've had a lot of grief in my personal life. And so there hasn't been too much, actually, in the mystery series yet. There will be. But I think what Kat grieves is her past life, the life that she had of success in the city with a nice family and a good job. And it's all, in the first book, gone. So she grieves that. And the 2 books are about how she rebuilds.
I just got in the car of a Catholic friend the other day, and she was like, "Just move the holy water, it's fine, and just get in the car." And I picked up a Classico jar full of holy water and had a pink Post-it, good use of a Post-it note. It said holy water, and I was like, never mind. I put it in the back seat, and we just...
In my book, there is, of course, there is a meditation of grief. Goser is deeply grieving a couple of significant losses, and then the main character, the murder victim, the family is actually, he was a terrible person, so no one's really grieving him, but they're mostly grieving. And I find this with murder mysteries. Either the person who died had it coming, and everyone hates them, or it was a shock when they died. It's something interesting we can talk about in terms of craft.
I just interject and say Game of Thrones
Yes.
ruined that because everybody who you love died.
That's true.
Yeah, but carry on. Sorry,
Yeah. Well, you got to have one thing that breaks all the rules, right? That's But the central theme, the question that I was kind of like meditating on when I set out to write my book is the idea that a woman's ambitions are often limited by their circumstances, and so a lot of Detective Auntie is actually about what could have been. So Khosrow Khan is a deeply intelligent woman who married young, lived in another country, immigrated to Canada, didn't really have a chance to pursue her education until much later. She had her children really young, which means that she didn't have the opportunity to maybe pursue a career outside of the home, even though she was married to a pretty kind and supportive man, but it didn't work out. And so here she is in her 50s, and she's kind of looking back on her life and thinking, I did an important job. I took care of my family. I contributed to my community. But what did I do for myself? So she has the fear of regret. She has, and that's really what the book is about. It's about how does she reimagine who she is now that, some people would say in your late 50s, you've already lived your life. And she's like, I have so much more to live, let me live. As well as navigating and kind of coming to terms with some of the things that have made her sad. I don't think Detective Auntie, it's probably my least funny book, but I do throw in a couple of jokes. I try, I can't help myself.
You always do, yes. Okay, I know I'm not getting to all the questions, so now I'm trying to pick the ones that I just most want to talk about. So I do want to talk about setting. So from the Scarborough neighborhoods to remote Gothic estates to small town newspapers, setting is so key in each of your books. I mean, it's key in every book, but I do feel that your settings do shape your tone and plot. And I want to talk about how maybe you turned your settings into a character, but also for Liz and Uzma in particular, I wanted, my part B of the question is, what does it mean to set your stories in Canada now in a publishing world that used to caution against it and they don't as much?
Well, I remember growing up, Margaret Lawrence was my favorite writer, but when we had to read The Stone Angel, and as for me in my house, and I just thought, oh, there's got to be some fun in Canadian literature. And then now there's this great, wonderful wave of commercial fiction, rom-coms, everything is fantastic. What Kate and I wanted to do, our books are set in a fictional cottage town called Port Ellis, and every town we go to, whether it's Huntsville or Bracebridge or Lakefield or Port Hope or Stratford, everybody says, "Oh, it's here, isn't it? Port Ellis is this place." And we're like, "No, it's the stew that we're talking. It's the carrots and the onions. It's all in there." But it was important to make it in Canada because that idea, and specifically Ontario, right? Like Manitoba has a different cottage culture. BC does. Definitely the East Coast does. And Ontario has this thing where, especially Kawarthas, Muskoka, you have these towns that have existed forever where there's this real tension between the seasonal people and the people who are there all year round. And a newspaper is the perfect place to kind of examine those tensions. That's why it was really important. And I hope part of what we're seeing in the world today with the embrace of all things Canadian is that people are going to be reading more Canadian. It certainly seems like you look at the bestseller list and it's all like there's lots and lots of Canadian books on there. It's very nice to see.
And for my book, I mean, all four of my books, except for our co-written novel, are all set in Scarborough or in the city of Toronto. I grew up in Scarborough. I feel like Scarborough doesn't get enough love, but though that is changing it, and Toronto doesn't get enough love. I want to highlight the city. I think we live in an extraordinary city. There's so many interesting things about it, and not to mention so many interesting people who live in our city. And partly it's because as a lifelong Torontonian, I was born and raised here. I want to represent the place where I'm from and the things that I think make it amazing. And also without shying away from talking about some of the things that make it really, really challenging. Like in Detective Auntie, I talk about gentrification, real estate prices, and auto thefts is like a recurring, one of the crimes that are discussed in the book, and policing, like all of these things do come up in Detective Auntie. And I think for people who maybe don't live in Canada, perhaps, who are picking up the book, they might be shocked to be like, like, wait, you live in Toronto and all of these things happen? We thought you lived in a utopia. Maybe compared to what's happening in the States, we live in a utopia right now. But, you know, we still have our share of issues. But, yeah, I also really love books that have like your book and your book, like the place is a character, right? Like the house in your novel and Port Ellis in your book series. I really enjoy reading books where, and that's I think what makes it a cozy, right? Because the sense of place is so strong.
Yeah, I mean, the Scruffmore family are so diabolical that there's no way they could be Canadian. I mean, you guys are also nice, except when you drive, and then you become terrifying. I cannot believe
They could be the Rogers family.
Yeah, I'm just like, I can't believe how lovely Canadians are, except when they're behind the wheel, and then all bets are off. So I wanted to create these gothic, dark and stormy night vibes, thunder and lightning, and I just had so much fun making up this island. And we don't say where it is; it could be anywhere. But yeah, they're way too awful to be Canadian.
I am wondering, I believe you're planning another installment in the Detective Auntie series. And Liz, you and Kate are 2 books into what is currently 4 books. And Bianca, I want to know if we'll see more of Destiny Whip, or if you will do a puzzle book again. So what I would like to know, this is sort of different for each of you. I'd like to know from the 2 who are continuing on in a series, what's the draw or the challenge of writing a series and returning to the same character more than once? Also asking for myself, because I'm planning to write a sequel of one of my books. And for you, I would like to know if you would try this again, and if you would revisit this character or this situation that you have with the puzzling murder indeed.
This book almost broke my brain. Writing this book was really, really hard, probably because I pantsed it. It has 16 puzzles. You can email the main character for clues, and she emails you back. There are choose-your-own-adventure chapters. There is a lot going on. I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote it. I don't know if I will actually go back to it. I love this main character. But for me, I think it depends on how well this book does. You know, publishers don't just allow you to publish sequels unless the first one does really well. So if this one does really well, I would love to revisit Destiny again.
Who's emailing back? Is that you, or do you have like a whole thing set up?
2 a.m., baby. Here I am.
You did not think this through. That is pantsing.
No.
The perils of pantsing. I know.
It is automatic. I set it all up depending on what you put in the subject line. She emails you something else. But I mean, as a kid, I just wanted to interact with the main character. And now you get to email her. It's amazing.
I thought you were going to say it was the ghost of your cat or something. It was writing back.
Probably.
It's her new cat, a lemon in every way except that it can send emails.
Can I just tell you, I once did find that my last cat walked across the keyboard and started writing an email that read suspiciously like, help. That's neither here nor there. You please carry on.
On the subject of, keeping it fresh and things, I always think of Arthur Conan Doyle. I mean, one would like to be as successful as Arthur Conan Doyle in a dream world. But, he did get trapped into this. He killed off Sherlock Holmes. He pushed him off that, down into the waterfall he goes. And readers were we would so love to have another mystery. And finally he was like, okay, fine. He's back. He's miraculously back. So I think, you do have to think, do I want to write this character into the dust, or am I going to let her? And I think as long as there's stuff in her life to explore, she's got a lot of things to work through still. I think the books will be good. And also, the town, as you say, such a character, I think. And it feels like Legoland. I feel like I'm playing with Barbies again. I can be like, oh, there's a theater here, there's a hospital here, there's a cranberry bog here, When do you get to do
map?
that? A map.
Have you drawn a map of the whole place?
Don't even. Okay, this is, you've touched on such a sore spot, Bianca. such a sore spot.
Sorry, guys.
Because I'm the one who can draw between Kate and I. And I have been promising for 2 years now to draw a map, and she's so good. She is just like, not saying a word about it. So thank you. I'm going to go home and start drawing that map.
This is the first time that this is my fifth book, my fifth published novel, and it's the first time that I'm writing a book that, will at least have a sequel. I'm actually working on the second book right now. And when I first conceived of this idea, I definitely liked the idea of having, as I said, I grew up reading Agatha Christie and having recurring characters, and I thought it would be so refreshing not having to completely make brand new characters with, their complicated family relationships and their individual problems, and just sort of pick up where I left off. But of course, little did I know, right? It's famous last words. Every book is very difficult and challenging in its own way. It's been very fun to kind of explore like Cozies' next chapter and what she's interested in, and so that's been really fun. But it's also, you have to, like you said, you have to keep it fresh and exciting, and that can be really challenging. And the other thing is, like, Detective Auntie's out in the world and people are enjoying it, so now I have all this pressure, like, oh no, I can't let Detective Auntie and all of her new fans down. So that's an unexpected thing that's happening as well. But it's great. I'm glad she exists in the world, and I hope I get to write her story as long as it's interesting to everybody, and including me.
I think I probably have time for one more question. I don't know where Elspeth is. Where did she go? But I'm going to do it anyway. So, do I have one more? Okay. So writing can feel so solitary. It seems so glamorous on the outside, but let me tell you, a lot of it is in your pajamas, kind of sweating it out alone and realizing you haven't left the house in quite a few days, and then going out in public and talking to real people and saying something very weird and then agonizing about it at 2 a.m. and all of that. And then, your cats come along and look hungry and you get scared. So anyway, I digress. But you're all deeply engaged with community, and whether that's through collaborations, teaching, podcasts, or mentorship. So I wonder, what does literary community mean to you? And I wonder, too, if you might want to position this to, if there are any aspiring authors in the crowd, how finding your writing community has shaped your path.
I think you should start. I will just say that Bianca, through let's just call it the shit community. The shit no one tells you about writing community. It's at Bianca's launch the other night. It was so beautiful. There were so many writers at different stages of their career, aspiring writers, people who were reading each other's work, agents and things, and there was nothing but love and support in that room. And it was really beautiful.
Yeah,
and
really inspiring.
Yeah, we've all been sort of on the road with each other, and everybody's just, it feels really lovely and supportive and Canadian, dare I say.
Very much so. I mean, it can feel so isolating to sit in this dark room and talk to your imaginary friends and never know if you're going to get published and if you're good enough. And we are always our worst critic. And so many emerging writers will speak to me and say, I'm not good enough, and they're already tearing themselves down before they've even tried to put their work out there. And so for me, through the podcast, it's been really important to build up a community where other writers are encouraging each other and lifting each other up. And now we're getting all these people who are getting published, who were on the podcast, and that is just amazing to be able to cheer them on.
It's lovely. Yeah, I think, well, first of all, book people are the best people, right? Like, I've met so many wonderful people and made such great friends and colleagues, really, and we're all in the trenches together, and it's very nice. It's a good community. And I also think that a lot of us as writers, we have lives outside of the writing world, too. So for myself, I'm a public high school teacher, so I have, like, my teaching world, and I think it's important as writers to kind of diversify your life in that way. Like, I always joke that I need a hobby, because my only hobby, I turned it into a job. I love to read books, and now I write books. So, I guess my hobby now is collecting writer friends. So, but those group chats are invaluable, right? When you're having a good day or a bad day, or you want to celebrate a win or commiserate about a failure, the group chats are key.
I I agree. Yes, the group chat, or like drop in a little hot gossip, hot Canadian literary gossip. Never very hot, but always interesting to us. So yes, I couldn't agree more, and I feel like I'm so grateful to have all three of you as part of my writing community, because I think I would be quite lost without knowing people like you. So thank you for that.